All right. Hey, everyone. So, um, you guys have sent in a ton of info about this Aquiplicity 2025 image tool.
Yeah.
And wow, it looks really, really cool.
Yeah.
I think in this deep dive, we're going to try to figure out what is Aquiplicity, how does it actually work, like with the techie side of it, but also how you actually use it to make cool stuff
Yeah.
and what makes it special. And I have a feeling there's some little hidden kind of secret things in these documents that even you guys might have missed. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a really interesting program.
okay, so the Aquiplicity manual.pdf that you sent over talks about this by Mr. Tracy Rose preset.
hmm
It makes you wonder, who is this Tracy Rose? And what is so special about his preset?
Well, it seems like Tracy Rose has been involved with Aquiplicity for quite a while.
Oh, really?
The manual mentions a desktop version from way back in 2010.
Oh, wow.
So it's possible that this preset is maybe tailored for a particular style or a particular type of image.
Okay.
Something we should definitely investigate.
I'm already hooked. Okay, so the manual says you upload a bunch of images, you hit compose, and Aquiplicity does its thing.
Yeah.
It sounds super simple even for someone who's not like a Photoshop expert.
Right.
But then it mentions these patching and lasso tools.
Yeah.
And that's where I start to get a little lost what is actually going on there.
Yeah.
The Aquiplicity analysis.pdf you sent gets pretty technical.
Yeah, it dives into the algorithms.
Okay.
Patching is basically copying pixels from one image to another, but it's not just random. It chooses the pixels based on how different their colors are.
So it's more like strategic copying and pasting.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Now, blending is different.
Yeah.
It analyzes all the colors from all the images you've uploaded and kind of averages them together to make a smoother, more blended effect.
Oh, so patching is like bold and blending is more subtle.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And then you have the lasso tool, and this lets you control where these effects happen. So you can literally draw a lasso around an area and say, I want to patch this area or I want to blend this area.
Ah, so that's how you get that fine-grained control.
You
I
guys
see.
do get.
Okay, so both of the sources also mention these threshold sliders, T1, T2, and T3.
Right.
What are those all about?
Yeah, so these control like how sensitive the whole composition process is.
Okay.
So the higher the threshold, the more mixing and matching Aquiplicity is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool is that it actually creates 3 different composites at 3 different thresholds and then blends those together.
Oh, wow.
And that's probably why the final images look so smooth and so balanced, because there's a lot of computational power going on behind the scenes to make that happen.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Okay, now the analysis document also mentions this Euclidean color distance thing.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, the math makes my head spin a little bit. Can you maybe break that down for me and for our listeners who might not be math whizzes?
Yeah, Euclidean color distance is just a fancy way of measuring how different 2 colors are, like mathematically speaking. So imagine like measuring the distance between 2 points on a map, but instead of miles or kilometers, we're measuring how different the colors are.
Okay, so a bright red and a deep blue would have a large color distance. But
Exactly.
like 2 shades of green would be closer together.
Exactly.
Got it.
And so Aquiplicity uses this distance to figure out which images to use for patching and how much to blend them.
Gotcha.
Basically, the math is helping Aquiplicity find the most visually interesting parts of your image to create a more interesting blend.
Okay, so even though it seems simple on the surface, there's some really sophisticated stuff happening in the background.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
And it's all designed to make the creative process smoother and more intuitive.
Speaking of smooth saws, the analysis also mentioned something about Aquiplicity's real-time feedback and performance optimization.
Right.
They compared it to, like, modern video games or graphic design tools.
Right.
I guess that's why it feels so responsive.
Yeah,
No one wants to wait forever for their image to update.
exactly. And that responsiveness is super crucial for the creative flow. You know, you want to be able to experiment and try different things without feeling bogged down.
Absolutely.
And you know what this actually connects back to Tracy Rose and their preset?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear about that.
Because Aquiplicity is so responsive, you can really get into that creative flow.
Right, and I'm curious, does this tie back to the by Mr. Tracy Rose preset somehow?
It's possible.
Did they have a hand in optimizing the software?
It's certainly possible. After all, Tracy seems to have been a longtime user, maybe even an advisor during Aquiplicity's development.
Uh-huh.
Perhaps their preset is designed to showcase the software's capabilities in terms of speed and responsiveness.
That makes sense. You know, it's one thing to talk about these patching and lasso tools,
Right.
but I'm a very visual person.
Sure.
I need to see it in action. The Aquiplicity manual.pdf does have some examples, right?
It does.
Okay.
For instance, it describes this quick patch feature. It's like a one-click wonder where you can swap out a small area of an image with a piece from a different image. They suggest using it to maybe fix little imperfections or add little interesting details.
So, like, imagine you have a stunning photo of a mountain range,
Yeah.
but there's this annoying telephone pole ruining the view.
Right.
You could use Quick Patch to get rid of it.
Exactly.
Or you could get creative and add something whimsical like a hot air balloon floating by.
Exactly. It's all about those little touches that make an image unique.
Yeah, I love that.
For bigger changes, you've got the lasso tools.
Okay.
The manual shows how you can use a patch lasso to replace a whole element, like swapping out the sky or even someone's face.
Ooh, I like where this is going. So you could take a portrait and with a few clicks, put that person on a tropical beach or in a bustling city.
Precisely, the possibilities are kind of endless.
Wow.
The manual also recommends choosing images with strong contrasts for the lasso tools.
Okay.
Like combining a snowy mountain scene with a photo of a coral reef.
Oh.
The results could be really incredible.
It's like creating a visual paradox.
Uh-huh.
Something that couldn't exist in reality.
Yep.
That's so cool. What about the blend lasso?
So the blend lasso is more about creating smoother transitions between images.
Okay.
Less about bold replacements, more about subtly merging things together.
Gotcha. The manual gives an example of blending a face with other portraits to create a surreal effect.
Right.
It reminds me of those dreamy, abstract photo manipulations you sometimes see online.
Right, but it goes beyond just portraits. You could blend a field of flowers with a cityscape blurring the lines between nature and urban life.
I'm starting to see how useful this can be for graphic designers, too.
Absolutely.
They could create unique textures or patterns or seamlessly integrate different elements in a website layout.
Absolutely. Aquiplicity isn't just an artist's tool. It's about understanding how those core algorithms, the color distance patching and blending, can be used to achieve a specific goal.
Right.
It's all about harnessing the power of these tools in a creative way.
Speaking of creativity, the manual has some extra tips and tricks.
Uh-huh.
It mentions experimenting with those threshold sliders, T1, T2, and T3.
Right. Those sliders give you so much control over the final result. Lower values keep more of the original image, higher values introduce more mixing from the other images.
So it's like conducting a little science experiment,
Yeah.
playing with those sliders and seeing what happens.
Exactly.
The manual also talks about checking out the console logs in your browser if you're really tech savvy.
Right.
That lets you see what's happening behind the scenes, right?
Yep. You can track every patch blend and slider adjustment in real time.
Oh, wow.
It's a way to kind of peek under the hood and see how Aquiplicity is working its magic.
It's fascinating how they've made this powerful software so transparent and accessible,
Yeah.
even for someone who's not a programmer.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the mystery of Mr. Tracy Rose.
Oh, yeah.
His preset has all the sliders set to a specific value, 0.13. Maybe that's his secret sauce for creating his signature style.
It's like you found the perfect balance point for all those settings.
Yeah.
That's a great point. We should definitely experiment with that preset later and see what kind of results we get.
For sure.
You know, the more we learn about Aquiplicity, the more impressed I am.
Me too.
It's not just about editing images. It's about creating something completely new, something that couldn't exist without this amazing blend of technology and artistic vision.
You got it. Aquiplicity gives you the tools and the framework, but ultimately it's the user who makes the creative decisions.
It's like a painter. And their brush, the brush itself doesn't create the masterpiece. It's the artist's vision skill that brings it to life.
Right.
And Aquiplicity is like a super-powered brush that opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And speaking of possibilities, there's one more aspect of Aquiplicity we haven't explored yet, the potential improvements section of the analysis doc.
Right.
Remember that threshold visualization idea?
Oh, yeah, that sounded pretty cool. It was about being able to preview how those threshold values would affect your image before composing it, right?
Exactly. Imagine if you could see in real time how different threshold levels would impact the blending and patching. It would be like having X-ray vision for your composition.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
It'd make the whole process even more intuitive and give users even more control.
For sure.
So how would that actually work?
Yeah.
Does the analysis go into any detail?
Welcome back to the final part of our Aquiplicity deep dive.
Yeah.
We've talked about all the technical stuff, the creative tools, but does the analysis actually explain how this threshold visualization thing would work?
It does get into some of the technical details it mentions using a heat map overlay to show the different threshold levels on the image preview.
Okay.
So areas with high blending would be shown in one color, areas with more patching in another, and so on.
So you would literally see the algorithm at work.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. That would be so helpful for like fine-tuning those sliders. You know, it's funny. We've been talking about Mr. Tracy Rose's preset and how he seemed to find like that sweet spot with the threshold settings.
Right.
I wonder if he would use this visualization tool if it had been available back then. It's a good question. Maybe he developed an intuitive sense for those settings over years of working with Aquiplicity, or maybe he would have embraced this new tool to push his creative boundaries even further.
It's hard to know, but it just shows how Aquiplicity is constantly evolving, always finding new ways to empower artists.
Mm.
Thinking about all this,
Mm.
it seems like Aquiplicity is more than just a piece of software. It's almost like a philosophy of creativity.
I agree. It's about taking existing images and kind of reimagining them, breaking them apart, and putting them back together in unexpected ways.
It's like those collages you used to make as a kid, cutting out pictures from magazines and creating something totally new.
Right.
Except Aquiplicity takes that to a whole new level.
Exactly. And it kind of begs the question, who is the real artist here? Is it the user or is it the software?
That's a tough one. It feels like a collaboration, like a partnership between the human and the machine.
Exactly. Aquiplicity provides the tools and the framework, but ultimately it's the user's vision that guides the process. They make the choices, they decide what to blend, what to patch, where to draw those lassos.
Like a musician playing an instrument. The instrument itself doesn't write the music,
Right.
but it provides the means for the musician to express themselves.
Exactly. A perfect analogy. And just like a musician needs to understand their instrument, Aquiplicity encourages users to understand the technology behind the art.
I see.
Knowing how those algorithms work, how those color distances and threshold sliders actually impact the final image, it all feeds into those creative decisions.
It's that blend of technical skill and artistic intuition that creates something truly special.
Hmm.
And that's what makes Aquiplicity so unique. It's not just about, touching up your photos. It's about creating something entirely new. It's about taking those pixels and unlocking their hidden potential, revealing these connections and possibilities that we might never have imagined before.
It's like those early photographers who were experimenting with double exposures and darkroom techniques. Aquiplicity is like a digital evolution of that spirit of experimentation.
And it's so much more accessible. You don't need a darkroom or any fancy equipment. You just need Aquiplicity and your imagination.
Hmm.
It's exciting to think about how this might influence the future of art and design. Will we see this new wave of artists who embrace this fusion of technology and creativity?
I think so. Aquiplicity is opening doors to new possibilities, new ways of seeing and creating it. It's an invitation to experiment, to explore, to push the boundaries of visual expression.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have a challenge for you. Now that you know how Aquiplicity works, now that you've seen its potential, what will you create with it? What unexpected combinations will you discover? What stories will you tell with your images? The possibilities are endless. So go out there and explore, and most importantly, have fun.
Happy composing!